So I'm here in my garage, or more accurately, my bedroom, and I am looking at my computer. My computer, or this at least a computer that was given to me a while ago, and I'm thinking of converting it up into a backup server, which essentially means that it will be a site for all of my family to upload all of their important documents and files as a backup means, uh, including family members who are like in Wisconsin and Texas, so that they would be able to back up all their important files, so that if their buildings were ever to catch fire, they'd be able to find all of their important files right here, right at my home. It also would allow me to take all of my files and upload them to my brother's place in Wisconsin, so that if my place were ever to burn down, we'd have all our files and all of our important documents over there. Or even if there's just something as simple as a hard drive failure, we could find some way to do it. And I do encourage you, I hope you do take the time to make a backup of all your files, because your files do have a date that they will die. They will be destroyed and they will no longer be usable, because your physical components, your hard drive itself, will die one day or another. Even the solid state drives, many of the solid state drives, the older ones, will still die at about the same rate, or maybe a little bit longer, but nearly the same rate as a hard drive. And so I do encourage you, if you don't back up your files, if you don't do it, then when your hard drive does fail, all of your files will be gone, or just essentially gone, unless you pay like $300 for someone to recover it for you. This saves all that heartache and all that headache. And that way you can keep those great pictures of Granny, kissing a chipmunk or whatever you want it on there. So, but when I was doing this, I noticed something interesting about how the way electricity works in physics, and I wanted to share this with you. Something I found when I was studying this, and a question that came up to my mind. So let me pull this down so you can kind of see it. So right here is this computer. It's a decent computer. It's a Dell, which is a 4-letter word, so it's bound to death. But it's an all right computer for what it's worth for being a Dell. But I want you to draw your attention to what's right up here. This thing that takes up a whole lot of space and seems rather unnecessary when you think about it, or when I think about it sometimes. This is the power supply. Now the power supply, its main function is to convert the alternating current from the wall, which is this wire connects to the wall and does alternating and gives alternating current back and forth, and it converts all that alternating current into direct current, which all of the parts of the computer use, from the hard drives, which you want to make sure are safe, to the processor, which is the brains of the computer, to the memory, to thinking space of the computer, to everything. All these things use direct current. And in fact, everything we use, just about everything you use, uses direct current. From your phone to your Nintendo Switch, to everything. They all use direct current. And they all have these really special devices too. Like your chargers. Your chargers, even like the most simple ones, they all are converters from alternating current to even a direct current of like a USB output of direct current. And so the question is, if all of our devices, if everything we have uses direct current, well, why in the world do we have alternating current at all? Why don't we just use direct current to power all our devices, and why don't we have direct current coming into the walls? It seems like it'd be much more useful and much more simple that way, instead of having to buy a new converter for every single device that we own. To answer that question, we've got to get into how alternating current and direct current works, and even what they are. So I was talking about this black wire, which uses alternating current, because it goes from my computer to the wall. Again, everything that comes from the wall is alternating current, but just about every single device, including every device that's battery powered, uses direct current. But any cord, whether it's alternating current or direct current, usually has wires inside of it. Well, they all do have wires, and you can kind of see. I hope you can kind of see what these wires look like. There's a green wire, there's a white wire, there's a black wire, and there's some copper bits inside of them. Ignore the silver tips. Those are just that's something else. That's not normally on in a wire itself. But you think about the wire itself. Let's actually understand the components of this wire. What's going on? This is a plug. This is normally what plugs into a wall. So the inside of a wire, it looks like this. You've got insulation on the outside. This insulation is to help keep you safe from the wire. So if anything was to fry inside of the wire, it wouldn't get to your hand and kill you. And inside each wire, inside the insulation, is more insulation insulating every single wire. We want to be as safe as possible here. That way each wire doesn't interact with one another and doesn't accidentally cross each other and create some problem there. So you got insulation around insulation, and then inside each of the different colored insulation, from the green insulation to the white insulation to the black insulation, inside of those insulations is the actual copper wire. This copper wire, this copper stuff, this is actually what transmits your electricity. This sends electricity, no matter if it's alternating current or direct current, this is what sends it. And this is the means by which we actually use all of our devices. So how does it work though? Well, all direct current, let's kind of get into what happened and how direct current came about. Direct current is this idea of exactly what it sounds like. It's the most intuitive idea of electricity. Electricity goes from the black wire, from the negative terminal, into the white wire, the positive terminal. So from black to white, black to white, black to white, and just constantly, that's what it does. Electricity comes from the black, goes into the white, and it's always that way. This green wire over here is what's called a grounding wire, and that didn't used to be in most wires, but they're in most wires now, just as a safety, as another safety feature. In case something goes wrong, or in case there's an extra power surge, or something, or there's a little bit too much electricity, or something doesn't go quite right, the green wire helps take all the extra electricity and just shoot it straight into the ground, so there's no problem. Okay, got it. So that's what direct current is. And Edison was the big guy who Thomas Edison was the guy who made this popular. He took this and sent electricity out and in. And that was the big idea of electricity. And it makes sense. It's all devices use it. It's simple. It's effective. It's powerful. It's great. And just about everything we use uses it. And this is how we normally think about wire electricity when it goes. It goes out one way and then the other way. And so, Edison, the great pioneer of electricity, he's the one who used just about all direct current. So why then is there alternating current at all? And what's the purpose of it? Well, there's two major problems with direct current. The first major problem is that it's deadly. Like, in some ways, I owe my arm to the fact that alternating current exists, because I was plugging a plug back into an outlet one time, and my finger was just a little bit too close to the plug as I was plugging it in, and as I plugged it in, electricity arced from the actual terminal, from the plug itself, into my finger, and just shot my entire arm. My arm was dead for the rest of the night, but I recovered from it fully. If it was direct current, I might have lost a hand. I don't know. But that's the advantage of alternating current. Alternating current is a much safer way of transmitting electricity, because it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It doesn't actually do the same. It can't do the same damage. The guy who developed alternating current was a guy named Tesla, as you may or may not have heard before. And Tesla loved to lord it over Edison. And in fact, at the World Fair one time, he took a giant elephant and stuck him on a podium and just ran direct current through the elephant, killed the elephant, just shot him to bits. And he told everyone on the world stage, "This is the problem with direct current. It will kill you, and it'll kill you dead." And so one of the major disadvantages of direct current is that it is dangerous. It's very dangerous. You don't want to mess around with it. And if you're dealing with high voltages like power lines, it'll definitely kill you quickly and easily. So that's the first problem. The second problem with direct current is the fact that it's not as efficient as we'd like to think it is. To think about it this way, in order to get electricity from one place to the next, we are forcing electrons through the copper. We are taking electrons and pushing them through the copper wire to the other side, instead of just being shoved through the wire. Or it's not really exactly what's going on, but it's a way of thinking about it. And when you do that, it takes a lot of energy to get electrons from one end to the next. And you got to think about, well, and from doing that, there's a lot of actually energy lost just from trying to get electricity from one side to the next. So you need to find a way. We wanted to find a way to get it so that when we transfer electricity from one end to the next, we won't lose so much electricity in the process. Now, granted, for all our small devices, that's not really a problem. If you're just talking about a computer, it doesn't really matter. You lose like a few electrons here and there. But if you're transferring electricity for an entire city over miles and miles and miles of land, well, any loss is going to be huge. You're going to lose tons and tons of electricity. And when you lose that electricity, you lose money. And so, just for financial reasons, we wanted to find a better way to send electricity from one place to the next. Comes in Tesla. Tesla comes to the idea and he says, okay, here's what we can do. Instead of electricity going from the negative terminal to the positive terminal, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, we will accelerate it. So we'll start sending electricity faster and faster and faster through the negative to positive, and then eventually when we get to top speed, we'll switch. So it'll start going from positive and negative, and then we'll do that faster and faster and faster, and start accelerating that. So we start doing positive and negative faster and faster, and then we'll switch back and we'll do negative positive, and make that faster and faster and faster and faster, and keep going back and forth. So it goes. So first negative sending electricity, then the positive sending electricity, then the negative sending electricity, and then back and forth, and so on. Well, why does that do anything? How does that help at all? Well, it took me a little bit of research to find, but the reason why this is so helpful for wall outlets is because this constant acceleration of electricity, instead of going through the wire, I won't have time, well, I mean, you don't really want to know about all the different details about why this works, but instead of going through the wire, because it's always accelerating, it's going to end up flowing on top of the wire. Think about, instead of just trying to run through a giant swimming pool, you get to do you slip and slide on a slip and slide across the wire. So electrons are flowing on top of the wire and on the edges of the wire instead of having to being pushed through the wire. This makes it much, much more efficient. It can just fly through the wires. It can go extremely far without losing much at all, given a few conditions which you don't need to get into again. But so this means that we can send it. We can not only just send it super far, and we can send it super safely. And it also means, think about the wires that send electricity, the power lines that are hooked up around us. Those wires are huge. They're massive. And if you think about how big these wires are, and you think about all the copper that's needed to send electrons through it, if you instead have electrons just flowing on top of the wires instead of through the wires, well, then you don't need the center of the wires at all. You can actually get rid of the center of the wires because all the electrons are just going around the edges anyway. So what we end up doing is we actually end up taking out, if you look at power lines, the wires inside the power lines are actually usually hollow on the inside, and that saves an immense amount of copper. So in another way, it saves a lot of money because we only need the thin outer layer of copper instead of like the inner substance, the majority of the insides. So it's extremely cheap, and that's really what it boils down to. So Tesla came up with this idea, and now when we have electricity flowing back, those power lines, by the way, they don't just flow back once or twice. They flow back. They keep switching back and forth 60 times a second. That means that each wire is shooting electricity 60 times, and the other side is shooting electricity 60 different times every single second. It's extremely, extremely fast, because you got to have that rapid change in order for electrons to go to the outside of the wire. But that's really why. That's this whole reason that finances. You got to think about, well, why do we have to buy all these power supplies, and why do we got to buy this power supply that takes up so much space in my server? Well, it's really because if we didn't, our electricity bills would be as big as Hawaii's electricity bills, and we don't, and nobody has the money for that. Our ability to advance as a society, as a people, and electricity, and make everything so dependent on electricity would be impossible if we didn't have alternating currents helping us get through it. And so it's much worth the problem of having to buy a converter. It's much worth it, the desire to just buy a converter for every single device and convert from alternating to direct, than to have to pay so much more for getting direct current to our house. And that's really the difference between alternating and direct. It's in the end run, it's just a ton cheaper, and that's how our nation works. it runs on what's cheapest. So I hope that's what's going on here.